Welcome, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar Wednesday. Hello, hello. We are so happy to have you guys all online and joining us today. This webinar Wednesday is presented by Can Do Multiple Sclerosis, and today's topic is on cognition, how to improve your thinking, attention, and memory. We are so happy to have you here. We want to give a big thank you to our sponsors who make this program available to you guys free of charge. And we're just so excited to dive in tonight. So at the end of this webinar, we will have about 20 minutes for a question and answer, and we encourage you to use the chat box or the question box to submit those questions. As we go through the program, you can answer or ask your questions throughout as things come up, and we will flag them for later. In addition, this recording will be posted on our website later, as well as the slides. So if you miss anything or want to go back and review anything, you can go ahead and do so on our website. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce some of our presenters. They are both Laura's. So our first Laura is Laura Hancock. She is a neuropsychologist in Madison. Hello, Laura. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, guys.
Thanks. And then we also have Laura Kingston, who is an occupational therapist in Portland, Oregon. So thank you, both of you, for being here. You can go ahead and wave and say hi, and then we'll start diving in.
Hi, glad you're joining us tonight.
Great. So just a quick overview of the things we will cover tonight. We'll go over how to recognize common cognitive challenges, differentiating between MS-related challenges from age-related challenges, the role of cognition screening and full testing batteries, as well as learning tips and strategies for managing your daily activities. So Laura, take it away.
Hi, everybody. We're so glad you're here. So first, we want to talk about what cognition is. We're going to start kind of just with explaining that. And basically, cognition is your thinking and mental processes. It's the way you interact with the world. And in my field, we think about cognition as being in several different categories. So we sort of have different types of cognition. We organize them into these categories, including attention, executive functions, memory, language, spatial skills, and word retrieval. I'll explain more about what those are later, but those are the basic skills and basically what cognition is. It's how we control our mental processes. So how do I detect any cognitive issues that I might be having? We all have cognitive issues from time to time. So for instance, some things you might notice would be making mistakes with bills or paperwork that you wouldn't normally do, trouble recalling the content of a conversation, trouble finding the right word when you're speaking or substituting words when you're speaking. As I said, we all experience some cognitive issues from time to time. And common things like emotional states can interfere with how well our brain is working, our best cognitive skills. So the best way to know for sure is to have your skills screened or evaluated. Cognition is different when you have MS, as I'm sure all of you know. Up to 70% of people living with MS have measurable problems with cognition. And these challenges can happen in any of our cognitive skills. The most commonly affected skills include processing speed, which is simply the brain's reaction time, how quickly it can send a signal from one part to another, whether that's to pull out a specific word or to raise my hand. Attention are skills like our ability to concentrate, the span of our attention, how long we can hold our attention. Memory is learning and recall of new information. Executive functions include things like problem solving, planning, and organizing. They're some of our most complex cognitive skills. And then word retrieval we're mentioning separately. It's not its own category, but word retrieval is something that can really be commonly affected by MS. So this is simply your brain's ability to go in and pluck out the name of that object at home, or the name of that person that you know, maybe you haven't seen for a while and you can't think of their name. But like I was saying, not all cognitive skills are usually affected. We don't usually see changes in a person's intelligence, basic attention skills, language, memory for factual information, long-term memory, meaning old memories, or orientation, knowing who you are, where you are, etc. So the reason we're talking about cognition today is because it's really, really important in terms of our daily lives and the things that we can do in our lives. Challenges with cognition can lead to several difficulties for us, including job-related issues or changes, problems with driving, tension in relationships, needing help to manage tasks, and additional stress on a person's support system. And people with MS are very frustrated by these symptoms, which are often described to me as invisible. So I can't tell you the number of people I've worked with in the past who say how frustrated they are that other people in their lives can't see this. And because they can't see it, like you might be able to see someone's broken arm, it can be a really big barrier sometimes in those relationships. And problems with cognition are actually the #1 reason people with MS leave the workforce. The invisibility of those symptoms absolutely contributes to that too. And so that's why we're talking to you about cognition today, because we want to provide education and also arm you with information that you can use to help you in your everyday life.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to transition now to one of our first interactive polls. What areas of cognition are you having the most difficulty with is the question. And then below you can select one of the following. So attention, memory, executive functions, which again, as Laura explained, deals with problem solving, planning, organization, word retrieval difficulties, and processing speed difficulties. Okay.
Word retrieval looks to be the #1 response so far. So that's I don't know about you, Laura, but that's really jiving with what I'm hearing in my clinic and with the people I'm working with every day. Word retrieval can be an especially frustrating cognitive symptom.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, especially if your job or your day involves communicating on a high level, that can be extremely frustrating. So now we're going to talk about what can I do? And as you see on this slide here, there's a healthy brain in the middle. And there are all these components that surround it. But unfortunately, just to begin with this, we currently do not have any medications that can actually reverse the cognitive effects of MS. And they really don't have too many medications out there either that can actually fill the gap to improve the cognitive effects of MS as well. But today what we're going to be focusing on is more of what can we do to compensate for them and things that you can take control of to try to make a difference to improve your thinking skills or word retrieval abilities. Or another area that a lot of people I know struggle with is that executive function category where you're having difficulty if something's multi-stepped, starting it and completing it well in a timely manner. And so today we're going to spend a bit of time talking about social connection, managing your mood and how that can affect it, exercising, which is one area that we can really work on, cognitive STEM, healthy eating, and good sleep, and then really pursuing some form of evaluation or screening tools to get a baseline. If you haven't already done that already, we really encourage that as well. And then following up with some cognitive rehab if there are some red flags that were found through the screening that a therapist can actually walk you through one-on-one and help you problem solve together.
So I just want to reiterate too, just because we don't have pills doesn't mean that we're stuck.
Yeah.
So we have options, including the things that Laura just went over. And so I just want you to think about that with an open mind and let us provide you with some of that information tonight to help you get started and focusing on what you can do and the power that you can take over this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah. So fatigue and cognitive function. With MS, we find there's a definite trend or theme that fatigue is an issue pretty much across the board at differing levels, but definitely at all levels. as your MS progresses or as it relapses and remits. And so we're going to just spend a little bit of time talking about fatigue and some management tools that you can use. So fatigue can also impact your cognitive abilities. I know most of the time we initially sense fatigue as something that just your body just feels exhausted and physically you just can't keep up with the tasks that you need to do during the day. But also as you get fatigued, it can affect the slowing of your processing speeds. It can affect your word retrieval. When you're more tired, it's just harder to find the right words to express your thoughts in an articulate way, your memory. And so most of you, I'm assuming, have noticed a bit with that as you've gone about the day. And most people, it's either at the end of the day or maybe at the end of a really busy week, you notice that things have just kind of stacked up and you're just exhausted and your symptoms seem to be exacerbated a little bit. But energy management is one of those key components that actually can help you optimize your cognition, your thinking skills. And remembering to pace yourself throughout the day is huge. In America, it's extremely hard to think like that because we have so much pressure to be efficient, get everything done as quickly as you can. And maybe some other countries too are like that, but it seems like in America, we're pretty driven to perform, and that can put a lot of pressure on you. But if you're able to pace yourself throughout the day, actually you're able to focus better because you're giving your brain rest breaks throughout the day and little moments to kind of recharge your batteries so that your mind is as fresh and clear as possible. And if you just go hard until 2 p.m. and then all of a sudden you're not only exhausted and feeling like a limp noodle, but you're also just, you cannot focus worth a darn. And so pacing is super important. And part of that actually has to do with how well you're sleeping at night. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time in the next slide talking about that. But currently there are no medications that really effectively treat fatigue. There are definitely some medications out there that can help with some energy management, but none of them are perfect. And so I think it's thinking about the big picture and combining possibly some recommendations your physician may have given you for that management, but also figuring out how throughout the day you can manage your energy levels better and not just exhaust yourself before the day's even done. So we're going to talk about some sleep hygiene strategies now. So some sleep hygiene tips, and I really like this slide, and it talks about the 4 R's of sleep. And so this is one way that you can kind of break down your preparation before you go to bed at night and really think about each category. And maybe as we go through this slide, there might be one category that really stands out to you that, boy, I'm really not doing that very well right now, or I can make a few changes in this one category. So as we go through this, maybe think about that and write some tips down or some suggestions that you can make for yourself after this, because our hope is that when this webinar is done, that it's just not in one ear and out the other, but you can take away a few key things. And this might be one slide that you can really maybe glean something from. So regularizing your sleep is really important. I'm trying to establish regular sleep and awake times. And I know sometimes depending on your schedule, this could be very challenging, because if your schedule fluctuates during the week and you have to get up early some days, or you work the night shift, and then you have to reset your button and be a normal daytime civilized human to function, and then you have to go back to work again at night, that can be tricky. So obviously with a grain of salt, but the more we can regularize when we go to bed and when we wake up, it can definitely help you get better sleep at night. Your body knows what to expect and it can predict that. Having regular meal and exercise times throughout the day can be very helpful as far as just your body's ability, again, to predict, when am I going to move and when am I going to eat? And that can help you wind down at night a little bit better as well. Making sure you get some exposure to daylight during the day. If you're just inside all day, your body needs that vitamin D. And even if it's a cloudy day, you still can get it outside, because I live in Portland, Oregon. So it's important to just get outside, even if the clouds are out, just to kind of hit that circadian rhythm of nighttime and daytime. But if you're inside all day and the lights are low, your body can get pretty confused as far as, is it nighttime? Is it daytime? You're not allowing it to have those natural rhythms throughout the day. And then a pre-sleep routine and making sure that you kind of have the same routine before you go to bed, and that kind of cues your body like, oh, okay, it's time to start winding down. I've done this before. I just did this last night, so here we go again. And it'll help your brain just to kind of quiet itself and not overstimulate it. So ritualizing your routine for bed too is super important, because really the bedroom should only be used for sleeping. A lot of us, and we talked about this prior to creating this webinar, but a lot of people kind of create their bedroom to be like you're camping out in your room. You've got everything around you. You've got your remote control, you have your food, you have your drinks, you have your books, you have your phone or your laptop, and your bedroom now has become your kitchen, your office, maybe even your bathroom, you know, especially if you're physically having some difficulties getting up and moving around. But you really want to try as best as you can to keep that room designated for sleep, because that will cue your brain again that this is a place for rest and it's not a place to do everything you do throughout the day. Making sure that the space is dark and quiet is important. And then as well as trying to turn off the TV and the radio at night. I know it's tough. Some people sleep with the TV on, but really, as you're sleeping, it really prevents you from going into that deep REM sleep at night. If there's a lot of unpredictable background noise, sleep machines are one whole other entity. And if it's the same sound rhythmically, those seem to do better for sounder sleep than if you have the TV on and there's loud noises and then quiet and talking and commercials, and those things can actually disrupt your sleep. Relaxing is also another category, so another R, and trying to remember to weave that throughout your day and throughout the week, which helps reduce stress, helping you control your tension. I know if I can't run or get out and get fresh air throughout the week, my tension just rises. And by the end of the week on Friday, I just feel so stressed out because I haven't had that kind of quiet space to get out and move and just do the things that I love to do to kind of relax. So it's important to think about that. Are you actually involving and incorporating things during the day that you're using to decrease your tension? And some of those things can be things like just stretching. Even if you take a 5-minute stretch break at your desk to just stretch your neck, your back, your hands, if you're on the computer. Journaling is really good, especially at the end of the day to clear your head. Praying and even doing yoga or other things that are just a little bit more calming, relaxing type of exercise that centers your body and your mind, that can definitely make a difference too with better sleep. And then the last thing with the last R is resist, and remembering to try to resist eating a bunch of food or drink before you go to bed, just because your stomach is still trying to digest all that before you're just trying to lay down and sleep. And as far as drink too, just making sure you're not drinking caffeinated drinks at least 3 to 4 hours before you go to sleep. Alcohol also can actually prevent you from getting a good night's sleep at night. And then resist any intrusive thoughts before you go to bed. So a lot of people will keep a journal next to the bed, and as those thoughts creep in, that just are thoughts that are not going to help you get a good night's sleep, and they're going to keep you up because you're worrying and you're focusing on too much. You can write those down and just know, okay, I'm going to deal with this in the morning, but right now I just need to let it go. And then trying to minimize screen use too. So making sure you're not on your computer right before you go to bed, or looking at Facebook, or doing one last little thing for work, or sending someone an email. If you can try to eliminate that at least an hour before it's time to wind down, that will really help you also get a better night's sleep.
Absolutely. And as I alluded to earlier, depression, anxiety, and stress can all cause or worsen cognitive issues that we might be having. These symptoms are known to cause slowed processing speed, problems with working memory, which is sort of like our brain's ability to do mental gymnastics, and disrupting our executive functions. So I'm wondering, has anyone ever had trouble thinking of a simple word when you were in kind of a high stress or high anxiety situation, like giving a speech or being put on the spot in a meeting? I certainly have. I imagine a lot of you have too. Or felt like your brain was as slow as mud when you were feeling sad. those are the kinds of symptoms that we're talking about. So we can all experience those symptoms, but if we already have a weakness in an area, then those symptoms can feel much more profound and can interfere with the quality of our lives. So the good news is that emotional symptoms are very treatable. But how do we do that? Early and ongoing screening is very important in order to identify changes in mood that need to be addressed through some type of intervention. I would love to tell you that right now it's really easy to get an appointment with a mental health provider, but unfortunately that's not the case. COVID and what's going on in our world today has really increased the demand for mental health services all across our country, and I assume here in America, but I assume other countries as well. So my main advocacy would always be to get therapy with a qualified provider, whether that's a psychologist, a counselor, a psychotherapist. In many states, there are people with lots of different titles who are qualified to and have the education to be able to provide good treatment. Sometimes that treatment might also involve the use of medications, but that's something that you have to discuss with your doctor in order to determine if that's right for you. So intervention can also take many other forms, including maybe even adaptation. So depending on your situation and what kinds of things might be contributing to your stress, working with an occupational therapist who can get you a piece of adaptive equipment you need to do your job or to perform an important role at home would actually help address your mood and might help lift your mood or reduce your stress. So OTs and other rehabilitation specialists can indirectly have a really positive effect on our stress and our mood. But self-care is also really important here. And I'm guessing that most people in the room are in the habit of putting themselves last when it comes to things that they have to do on a day-to-day basis. So whether you're doling out your energy to your job, to your family, to your children, maybe you're providing care to someone, a parent or an aunt or uncle, providing care to children, whatever those roles and responsibilities might be, we often address everyone else first and leave ourselves to last, and sometimes skipping ourselves in terms of providing that care and attention. But you have to fill your cup too. And if your cup isn't full, you can't help other people with the things that you want to help them with. So self-care can take many forms. It really depends on the person. It depends on the situation. Exercise is a really important form of self-care. And I know maybe exercise might seem like a dirty word to some people. For some people, it's not the thing that they really enjoy doing. But Laura is going to talk to you later about how important exercise is for cognition and for well-being, but it can also help lift our mood. And it can also help regulate our moods and reduce stress. Taking bubble baths, connecting with other people in your life. There are all kinds of things involved in self-care. I'm just trying to think of another example. Even just maybe taking the time to read a book that you want to read. And you take half an hour for yourself to read that book and enjoy the time reading that book. So self-care doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't have to be very time consuming, but it is a really important part of what we should be doing every day for ourselves.
And as Laura mentioned, exercise is one component of that. And not only can exercise be used as a self-care mode, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but it also can help improve your cognitive function, which is more of what we're talking about during our webinar today. But just to talk a little bit about exercise and the benefits, self-care is a broad topic, and sometimes we think of self-care as something that is going to feed our soul and rejuvenate us and give us that quiet space to just feel like we're engaging in the things we love. But self-care also can mean doing something that's going to help us stay healthy and well. And aside from our MS, the bigger picture of self-care and making sure that our cardiovascular health is still good, that we're trying to manage our weight okay, because the more weight you have, the harder it is to move, and the more energy it takes for you to move, and the more fatigued you get, And so there's all these subcategories within exercise and why it can be so helpful. So in general, just exercise is good for multiple reasons, but it is a powerful tool, and we'll talk about that from a cognitive point of view in a minute, but it can boost your mood too. And I think sometimes just thinking about going out and doing any form of exercise, even if it's just a 10-minute walk, you're just kind of like, I just don't have energy, or it's pouring rain outside, but usually once you do it, you definitely are glad you did it and you feel better. And having someone to take with you can help. So if you need to recruit others, that's one question right now for you to start thinking about too, is who's that person that you can recruit to come alongside of you. And one of those people can be a physical therapist, and they're in the clinic. And so by going though, it can help with some motivation, but also it can help with tailoring exactly what exercise program you actually are going to benefit from. Because with MS, there can be so many symptoms that go along with MS. Some of them can be spasticity, muscle weakness, balance issues, walking difficulties. You can also have some bowel and bladder function difficulties, and seeing a women's health physical therapist, they can also address those things by strengthening certain muscle groups. And so it's just such a multifaceted component of our lives that everyone should try to engage in some form of exercise. And this next slide, we'll talk about that, but that would be a question for tonight. Are you engaging in any form of exercise? And just to think about that. And, there's definitely resources, and we'll talk about that later if you need help to figure out what that might look like for you. So we'll go to the next slide and talk about strategies. Really, it is recommended that we try to all achieve 150 minutes of exercise per week. And I know that number sounds extremely high and daunting, and you're probably thinking, wait, I thought I was supposed to just do 3 times a week, 30 minutes, and that would be 90 minutes. But really, they're now encouraging that we all try 150 minutes of active time that we're up on our feet. And that just doesn't mean running or walking, or it can include getting dressed, laundry, taking a shower. So all those self-care routines you do in the morning just to get up and go for your day, that can be included in that amount of minutes. And so don't feel overwhelmed by that number, because if you really started to write it down, and that might be actually a good exercise too, just to write down, what was my active time today. And the Apple Watches are kind of nice for that, or all the different watches they have out there where they can track how much time were you moving during the day. And that might be something to consider getting to, just so you have a sense of, am I moving enough, or really am I thinking I'm moving a lot, but I'm really not. And so just consider finding a way maybe where you can track to see if you're close to that 150 minutes per week or not. And really by exercising too, though, which is our focus tonight, it really can improve our cognitive processing skills. Exercise is amazing at just how it can really release endorphins. It can help clear your head. And sometimes you just need that space to just move and not be completely engaged with the computer and all these to-do lists and everything that's in front of you just feel so overwhelmed with. But when you're exercising enough, and if you really, really are exercising, you really don't have the space to think about a bunch, because you're just focusing on breathing and just being in that moment. But I think that discipline can actually help you, because it's a way to clear your head. And then when you're done, you can come back, and most people say they just feel more focused. They're able to attend longer for a period of time afterwards, once you take a rest break. But it really can help you process things a little bit more clearly in your mind and engage back in work. And then your mood too. I mean, we all need it, especially through this last couple of years with COVID. Everyone has been on a roller coaster ride, and exercising definitely can be one category that can help. And as your mood improves, you will be able to sustain your concentration longer on things. You'll be able to remember things better, because if we're not attending, while we're hearing things, it's very, very hard to remember them because you're not even focusing when you're hearing the information to process it and place it in a memory bank. And so again, exercise can help with that. But really with Can Do, we like to say the most effective exercise that you pick is the one that you stick with. So it can look like anything, swimming. It can look like going for a walk with a friend. If you have a recumbent bike in your house, and it's hard to be as mobile, having someone help you get on one of those. And even just creating a little circuit in your house where you have like 3 stations and you go to them and you work on some just core strengthening. And that's where the physical therapist can come in and really help tailor what might work best for you and something that you will stick with.
Absolutely. We also recognize that there are concerns about the health effects of a poor or suboptimal diet on brain health, both in direct and indirect ways. So directly, we know from research that poor diet supports chronic inflammation, extends recovery time after an injury, and can also result in vitamin deficiencies. Indirectly, poor diet causes cardiovascular and metabolic disease. It creates a less diverse microbiome in our gut, and it can cause excess weight and adipose or fat tissue to accumulate. There is some promising evidence in terms of what is sort of the optimal diet or way of eating for people who have MS, but there's not enough evidence yet to clinically recommend or promote a specific diet in MS. So the best advice we can give, bearing in mind that we are not dietitians, is to choose a way of eating that incorporates as many healthy elements as possible, but that you can also stick to most of the time. So just that same principle that Laura was just talking about with exercise also applies here too. We're all human. Not a single one of us are perfect, as much as we might like to believe that we are. We're not. So just try to do the best that you can. Could you reduce the amount of processed foods that you eat? Could you increase your fruit and vegetable consumption? So I've listed here some of the kind of basic tenets of healthy eating that you could try to focus on, like preparing more food at home, because then you control how much salt, how much fat, how much sugar is going into that food that you're eating. Increasing fish consumption, decreasing red meat consumption, things like that. We also recommend that you speak to your primary care provider or your neurologist if you're planning to change your diet. Obviously, you could also meet with a dietitian. Many of our health systems have registered dietitians you could meet with who could provide you with some one-on-one ideas about ways to improve the way that you eat based on what you like and what you don't like, and also based on your specific health needs. Like if you also need to watch what you're eating or watch your salt intake because of problems with your heart or high blood pressure. So your doctor may have specific recommendations for you or want to monitor your vitamins and minerals, because some diets can, as good as they might be for one thing, they can cause a vitamin or a nutrient deficiency that needs to be monitored to make sure that you're not getting into a dangerous zone. So next we want to acknowledge the impact of aging on cognitive function. We all actually experience cognitive changes as we age. And as we age, those symptoms can occur more often. So this is true no matter whether a person has MS or not, whether they have another neurological disease like Parkinson's disease or not. We are all subject to this because unfortunately our brains are aging, just like our knees are aging, just like our backs are aging. We're all getting older and every part of us is getting older too. So it can be common to experience things like forgetting a phone number, forgetting somebody's name, forgetting where you parked the car, misplacing your keys, where you put down the scissors, or missing a turn you intended to take while driving. Some of those symptoms are things that all people experience at one time or another in life. So with MS, it can be a little bit trickier in terms of determining what is just normal aging and what is my MS. So for instance, if you notice that you're forgetting phone numbers more frequently, is that because I have MS, or is that because I'm just, a such and such age person now? Most of the time, the only way for us to know that for certain is to have our cognitive skills formally evaluated. So as part of that evaluation process, you will be given tests that have been given to thousands of other people who are screened for every possible thing that could impact brain health. I call them the cognitive superhumans for this reason, because they're meant to be the epitome of healthy aging, the example of healthy aging. So we can then compare an individual person's performance on all of the tests that are given to those other people who have been screened for literally everything under the sun. And then that's how we can tell if something is abnormal for a person's age. Mm-hmm. The strategies, though, for managing these changes are the same, whether it's an age-related change or an MS-related change or both. So that's the good news.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, thank you, Laura. And I think as we go through this list too, this is another slide that as you're processing through each one of these bullet points, maybe take some notes and write some things down in a category here that you might be able to start to implement into your day a little bit better to help you with some strategizing and focused ability to recall information or just process through your day a little bit better. So the first one we'll go through is just about staying organized, and we're all on the quest for organization. Trust me, I so badly just look around our house, even want to organize every closet around this place. But the more organized we can be, the better. And you can just take small bits, like it might just be you're going to organize your purse, even. You're going to organize the folder that you have with you all the time that has kind of your daily planner information in it if you're not using a phone. And you can even organize your phone. I mean, if you're using your phone for things, just how things are queued and as reminders to you too. Just keep a very simple system down, and those things can help. But the more organized you are, the better, in order to have a clear head, have a clear space around you so you can think clearly, and that you're not around a bunch of clutter while you're trying to focus on important duties during the day, or even creating your to-do list in the morning. It's probably one of the greatest things that you could try to do in the space that you need it the most. So number 2 is eliminating and concentrating. And this can look different for everybody. And that's where a therapist, after this program, we're going to recommend just thinking about who's on your healthcare team, but really trying to eliminate the things that really aren't necessary. They would be nice if you had them done, but they're not necessary, and concentrate on the things for that day that you absolutely need to get done. And then you'll get back to them, but you just have to remember those things that you pushed aside for the next day to carry them through. But eliminating and concentrating, sticking to a routine, again, like we talked about, even with sleep, but also during the day. Routines can help with predictability and help your mind stay engaged because it knows what to expect. And as best as you can have a routine, your body then can function on a little higher level than if every day it's a complete, you wake up and go, what am I going to do today? And it looks different every single day. Well, your brain's working so much harder to try to come up with a plan for that day then, because it's never had that plan before. So sticking to a routine can be helpful. Keeping a calendar or a daily activity log or a to-do list. And I know you've heard this many, many times before, but it really can help you stay organized and help you stay focused on what you should say yes to. And as things come throughout the day, they're taking of your time, it'll help you to look back at that log, if that's the intent, and to be able to say no to certain things because it just doesn't fit in with your plan or your goals for that day. Minimizing distractions, again, we've talked about before too, but that can definitely help. If you have a crazy noisy background going on around you when you're trying to focus and get something done, even balancing the checkbook, the TV's on, you have music on in the house, children are running around, the dog's barking, those things can really distract your mind from engaging very well in the tasks that you need to get done. So having a quiet space to do those things that require more focus really can help. And then number 6, doing complex tasks during the day when your energy or focus is best. And most people, everyone is a little different, but most people would say the morning is the best time for them to do those higher level, multiple step tasks that require a lot of detail and focus. And if you wake up feeling refreshed, so that's the key, wake up feeling refreshed, that would be the best time to go ahead and try to do those things, because then later in the day, you can save more of those rote activities that are just kind of a no-brainer type of thing that you could easily do even if you're somewhat exhausted and your brain feels kind of mushy and you can't find the right words to say. Well, you don't even need to talk, while you're washing the dishes in the sink, just do the dishes. But saving those things later on. And then number 8, which is probably the most important thing, is trying to recruit others to help you with tasks that you have little margin of error for. So things like if managing your medications is becoming more difficult and you're realizing you're forgetting either A, to take the medications on time, or B, you forgot and you took them twice, so you're doubling your prescription, balancing your checkbook, paying bills, anything where if you make a mistake, it's going to end up being a big mistake down the road. Those are the first areas of life that I think it would be good to think about who's on your team that you could recruit, that you trust, to kind of walk into that and help you with those things.
And when we're
I was just
go
going to
ahead.
say one last thing, Laura, and I think the most important thing, and especially as Laura talks about this too, but just to retain information, the more you can see it, say it, and hear it, the better chance you're going to have to retain it. And so as we go through this session tonight too, and we have questions coming up here in a minute, remembering that, try to involve all your senses to help you engage as well as you can.
I agree. Our focus when we're working with people who have MS is always on strengthening skills. Rehabilitation may not be able to restore every person to their pre-MS baseline, but it can help maintain brain health in the long term. So we want to focus on relearning a skill that was lost, but also strengthening skills that were weak and learning new skills and strategies to compensate, and perhaps keeping strong skills strong so that they stay strong into the future too. And we recommend working with a professional. And there are lots of different professions that have the education and training to do this kind of thing. So it might, in your area, it might be a speech language pathologist, it might be an occupational therapist, rehabilitation psychologist, neuropsychologist, or rehabilitation counselor. So you just have to reach out and ask. Your neurologist would be a good place to start because they've probably sent other people to go work with a rehabilitation professional and have some ideas about who has experience working with people who have MS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This next slide is just perfect for what Laura had just mentioned. So are you leveraging your healthcare team that you currently have? And Laura mentioned a few of the disciplines that you might be seeing are providers, but others, you might not have a neurologist right now. And if you don't, you're just seeing a primary care physician. I mean, they can definitely as well write a prescription or referral for any of the other therapy disciplines, or a neurologist or neuropsychologist, even if you need to do a battery of cognitive screening tests. And then also, a lot of times in the clinics, I mean, we're lucky sometimes if you go to the doctor to see a doctor. So usually it's the nurse practitioner that you might be speaking with, or the physician assistant. And those aren't listed down here, but they actually also can be a great resource for you to be an advocate for you, because they actually probably spend a little more time with you than your doctor might. And so just don't rule them out as well for becoming a pretty strong advocate and member of your healthcare team as well. And so we're going to just do a brief poll here. And again, which healthcare team member have you consulted with about your cognitive challenges? And we'll just have everyone just kind of do a brief screening on this to see if you have a team, which we're all hoping you do.
I'm really happy to see that so many of you have talked to your neurologist about any cognitive challenges. I think that's a great resource. And Folks are using other resources too, but 30% of you haven't consulted with your healthcare team, and that's okay. If you don't have concerns, you don't necessarily have to consult with them. But if you do, we want to encourage you to use those resources that you have at your fingertips. And if you're not particularly happy with your primary care provider or some other provider, you can always switch and find a different provider who you feel like you can talk to about those things. So these are some examples of instances when I would like you to think about considering asking for help. So these symptoms may or may not indicate a problem with thinking skills, but we wanted to give you examples of things that could be a red flag so that you can get help sooner rather than later, because that research has shown us that initiating rehabilitation sooner has better outcomes for each individual person. So if you find that you're overpaying a bill by accident, double paying, or forgetting a bill more than once, you were the victim of a financial scam or fraud, mixing up medications or missing several doses of important medications, leaving a burner on for many hours, accidentally starting a fire, getting into trouble at work because of mistakes or errors, and getting lost in your town while driving. So, as I said earlier, we all make mistakes here and there, but if you're noticing one of those mistakes that I just mentioned, or if you're noticing a significant change, I certainly have had patients in my clinic who have forgotten about a bill here and there, but that's the same now as it has always been for them their whole lives. So if you notice a change in your pattern or your habits, that could be an indicator that it's time to ask for help. And how do you ask for help? Well, identifying a trusted individual can be a great place to start. People in your life whom you can call when you need them. This could be a family member, a friend, people at your church or another community organization, or even your primary care provider. You can ask for help in critical areas, as Laura mentioned, like medications or finances. And the way you ask for help is simply to say, I need help. As we said earlier, these symptoms are often invisible to other people. And if they probably don't know that you are having trouble with your memory, or that you've forgotten to pay the electric bill so many times that they're threatening to cut off your service. So you have to tell people in your life that you need help, because they probably don't know. Even if they're caring and they want to do something for you, they have to be aware that you need that. The MS Navigators are a fantastic resource. This is provided by the National MS Society. We've given you their phone number here. You can Google it and find it as well. But these are a team of individuals who can help you request reasonable accommodations at work or apply for disability, find community services that you deserve and that you need, and help brainstorm ideas to help get other things that you need. And so lastly, I want to talk to you about getting objective information about cognition that can help us determine whether the changes are more than just normal aging. And that evaluation also helps your providers know how and when to intervene, and helps open up options to people who need them. There are several different professionals who can do a screening evaluation. That includes neuropsychologists. That's kind of a special, different thing. That's maybe a little bit longer, but speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, and rehabilitation psychologists can all do this type of evaluation. And your neurologist might do an even shorter screener in order to determine, okay, now is the time for us to go tap into one of these specialists and help you get the services that you need. We recommend screening at diagnosis and then periodically thereafter. Usually screening is recommended about every 1 to 2 years, or as needed, depending on that individual and their situation. Sometimes we need to screen more often than that. Sometimes we don't need to screen as often as that. Your neurologist or your primary care provider can help guide you through that to determine how often it's needed for you. let us know in the chat if you've ever had a cognitive evaluation before. I hope that you have.
Mhm. So as we wrap up, because we want to definitely, sorry, went over a little bit, but leave some time for some questions for all of us. But just to remind yourselves, just all the key takeaways that lead to a healthy brain and these components we've talked about this evening. And also as a link on here, there's a couple of brochures that Morgan has placed on there. One is about managing cognitive problems, and then also fatigue, what you should know. And both those are also available on the National MS website as well, but you can access them here. So,
And Can Do MS also has a lot of great resources on their website too. So if you haven't already, definitely check those out. And now we're going to field questions from you all.
But the first question that I have for both of our panelists are, how can you communicate to your healthcare team the cognitive challenges that you're facing and to get them to take you seriously to get that evaluation process started?
Mm-hmm.
I'll start, and then Laura can add her opinion too. My best recommendation is to be direct, to tell your healthcare provider, I'm very concerned about changes I'm noticing in my cognitive skills, and I would really like to be evaluated formally.
Mm-hmm. I think another way too, if you go to the office prepared and you've kind of kept a log of times during the day when you've had issues with memory, executive function, word finding, and you can write next to the symptom what you were doing at that time. And a lot of times their neurologist or your physician, it kind of helps them do aha, like, okay, they're taking this seriously. They've taken time to write this down. And I see there's been days or weeks now that these symptoms continue to come up. And I think sometimes that also can help them to just seriously listen to you and show that this is affecting my work, this is affecting my ability to start and complete a day well, and to continue to be as efficient as you can be. So
yeah, I would also recommend, if you can, if your significant other, spouse, friend, whomever it might be, can come with you to that appointment and help advocate for you. I mean, I would love to tell you that every healthcare provider listens beautifully and behaves exactly the way we would want them to, but you guys all know that that's not always the case, and we're all human and we have good days and bad days too. So sometimes having that other person in the room saying, I'm seeing this too, and I'm really concerned, and I really, I think this idea of having an evaluation is a good one. That can sometimes also help that healthcare provider really understand what where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That's great. On that same vein of, communicating to others about your cognitive challenges, is there any great way to describe the difference between, let's say, cognitive challenge and intellectual challenge to your friends, coworkers, boss, other people that are in your life that don't quite understand what cognitive function and cognitive fog might be for someone living with MS?
Mm-hmm. I would just say, and I know that Laura can definitely add to this, but I think intelligence, I mean, a lot of MS symptoms, and especially with cognition, really most people don't complain of long-term memory issues, ability to complete a skill very well that they've done for a long time for their work. Some of those things that maybe people see as an intelligent person might hold, those things usually are not as affected as the immediate word finding difficulties, short-term memory, not long-term, but short-term memory. And so maybe that would be one way that you could explain that. There's some areas that are definitely a greater theme with MS and cognitive difficulties than just overall intelligence.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah,
I completely agree. Intellect, we don't see intellectual changes in people who have MS. We see those other specific skills Laura mentioned. And so I think when you're trying to communicate with people in your life who you want to disclose this to, sometimes providing examples can be helpful. So things like, for instance, after I go home after this conversation, I'm not going to remember everything we talked about. But I remember the time when we were 10 and, we pulled that prank on the neighbors, or whatever it might be. So if you can give concrete examples, that might help them understand more about what you need. And then you can also follow that up with, it would really help me if you could do X, and give them something concrete. Like maybe you want them to text you instead of calling you, because then you can reread the messages later to help refresh your memory, or send you an email instead of calling you when it's something important or something that you're going to need to follow up on in the future.
Those are great tips. In regards to cognition challenges being reasons that people leave the workplace, do you guys have any recommendations for getting accommodations at work, or knowing when to leave the workplace when you're dealing with a struggle like that?
Go ahead, Laura, start with that one.
Okay, well, this is a really individual decision and a really personal decision. And so I always try to support my patients the best way that I can there, whether that's writing a letter to support reasonable accommodations in the workplace, whether that's writing a letter to support a disability application if that's warranted. But like I said, it's a really personal decision. And I think it's something that, talking to the MS navigators, in certain states, there are also state-funded organizations that help with this. Like, so for instance, in Wisconsin, we have an organization called the Aging and Disability Resource Center. And every single county has an office with people who work there every day, who help people decide, is it time to pursue disability? How do I do that? So if you have that in your state, that can also be a great resource, and you can even sit down with that person face to face, which is nice. So, but it is something to consider, you know, as I'm sure Laura's going to talk about, in terms of how much you might get from disability, and can you live on that amount of money, versus would it be better to maybe go down to a reduced schedule at work? That's a very individual decision. And it really depends on your situation and your family situation.
Yeah, and I think the MS navigators also are very, very good at understanding or referring you to people who understand the legalities of all of this, because there's so many layers to considering when you decide that you're just not able to work anymore, and making sure that you are going to be set up for success before too much time has gone by, and then you're in a dire situation where it's very obvious even that week you're not going to be able to complete the tasks that are asked of you for your job that week. And so making sure, if you're feeling that there's any glimmer in your mind that your current position is becoming a struggle, and you know it deep down, I would want to encourage you to meet with an occupational therapist and try to help you problem solve and figure out, well, what part of your job is difficult right now, and can we just troubleshoot a little bit? And by adjusting a few things, you might be able to notice a huge difference with how you can complete a task from start to finish. But if after you do that and it's becoming more obvious, that would definitely be the time to reach out, so that you can maintain as much income and get that in place before too much time goes by, and then either you're laid off, or you have to continue to whittle down your hours to almost nothing, and then there's layers to that too. So a lot to seek and reach out for some help and assistance with it. That can be kept confidential.
Mm-hmm.
And we have time for one final question, and that's going to be, are there any brain exercises or daily activities that we can do for your memory or for your cognitive function?
Yeah. You know, one thing I recommend, I don't think there's a one, end all be all activity. And we've discussed this a lot at Can Do and even beyond with all our coworkers, but I think it's how you're compensating and also what you're engaging your brain in at the time. And one thing I think is a wonderful thing to do with someone else, especially, is reading an article of interest or a book and then getting together with them and discussing it, because you're not only engaging your brain in an activity that you're interested in, because it's a topic you're interested in, but you're also including someone else with you to help talk about the details of the article or the book you've read. And it can be a back and forth thing. And if it's a person that you also trust, and they'll be the one too that maybe starts to notice like, okay, yeah, you're having a little harder time with retrieval or focusing. And so I think that's a wonderful exercise to do in brain activity, reading and then discussing an article or a book.
Mm-hmm.
Versus
And I think that can
video games or apps. Mm-hmm.
I think that can look so many different ways to different people. You know, you want to flex those muscles and you want to practice those skills, whatever that might be for you. So for instance, thinking back to the slide Laura reviewed earlier about like trying to organize your space or trying to reduce distractions. So think about what seems to be the biggest challenge for you, even if you haven't had a formal evaluation, to be able to know, okay, these are my areas of weakness. But you can think about and probably figure out what some of your weaknesses are or where you feel not as strong, and then tackling those things. Like for instance, one of the most socially acceptable normal strategies is writing things down. It is a great memory strategy. It's something almost every person does, so it doesn't look weird if you're doing it. And then you can take that even further, extend that to do some rehearsal or practicing. So if you've got something new that you want to learn and you really want to commit it to the memory store, repeating that information over and over, all of our brains learn best that way. But once we get out of school, we stop doing it for ourselves. So the more you can involve that natural rehearsal and repeating, the better. And for some people, that might be rewriting those notes that you took in a meeting, or reading them to yourself out loud while you're paying attention to them, and then doing it again later. But finding ways to do that can also really help flex that muscle.
Right. Thank you so much to both of our presenters for the information today. I'm sorry I went just a little bit over, but thank you everyone who stayed on. I hope that you learned something tonight, that you got some of your questions answered. Additionally, we do have Ask the Can Do team on our website, which allows you to ask a question and get answered by any of our MS pros that we have on our team here at Can Do MS. This recording will be available later on our website as well as the slides. So I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and hope to see you all soon. Thanks so much.